and welcome back. I'm talking today with Chief Inspector Mick Roffe from North Yorkshire Police, and we are going to be chatting about exercise Obtundity, which took place in January this year. The Obtundity exercise was a multi-agency event that really tested the joint response of the emergency services to a series of terrorist incidents. So fascinating, broad event that we're going to hear all about. So in this part, we're going to find out all about the exercise, what goes into planning something like this, and the people involved. Now, Mick, before we talk about the exercise itself, the burning question is, am I pronouncing it right? Obtundity. And how and why did it get its name?
I think you are pronouncing it right, because that's how I pronounce it as well, Obtundity. How did it get its name? It's not my decision. It's not a North Yorkshire Police decision. So these exercises are overseen and administered by the Counter-Terrorist Policing Network. So they choose the exercise name. And I suspect it's fairly like North Yorkshire now. We choose our operation and exercise names. We have a dictionary list of nondescript names that are very bland, that don't have any kind of connotation behind it, and we pick it at random. And CTP, so Counter-Terrorist Policing, are currently in the O's, so their operation names are beginning with O's, and we see that transition down the alphabet, and we start again at the start once we get to the end. So there's no hidden meaning behind it, no real science behind it. It's just randomly selected through a fairly mundane and boring process. Sorry, it's not more exciting than that.
It's a bit like the storms, really, when we go through the alphabet and we get names of storms, and then we start again at the beginning when we used them all up. Oh, well, there we go. If nothing else, then we've learned something interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about the Obtundity operation and the work that goes into planning something like this?
So, Obtundity really was born out of some of the Manchester Arena inquiry findings and outcomes, learning outcomes. So, off the back of the Manchester Arena inquiry, which is an absolutely tragic event that obviously blue light services responded to, and that inquiry has examined that response, there's a number of outcomes that have been generated because of that. And we're obligated as police forces, certainly, and blue light partners, to look at those outcomes and try and kind of bring them within our own organisations and bring about change. So essentially, Obtundity was about testing what we call JOPS 3, which is Joint Operating Principles version 3, which is a set of rules that we all kind of work to as blue light services. So when we work together on a regular basis in different nuanced areas of blue light response, but we don't exercise all the time in this way. So these are a set of rules that when we come together in response to these incidents, which sadly do occur, hopefully not too frequently, but they do occur. When we come together, it's a set of rules that we abide by. The Manchester Arena inquiry broadly looked at response times. I think some of the themes that have been widely publicised are that there was a feeling that blue light services didn't work particularly cohesively and worked in different zones. So we have cold, warm and hot zones, and it's about an acceptance of risk. So some blue light services stayed out of the hot zone areas because that's what they were trained to do at the time. And Manchester Arena inquiry identified that really that's not ideal, because we've got people in hot zones that need emergency care kind of immediately, life-saving care immediately. So we can't have this kind of, again, where we stay outside these zones. So I know that's a long-winded way of saying where I'm getting to. So that's the basis of the operation, and that's the basis of our exercise, really. And when we ran it, we wanted to test these new principles, which the new principles kind of force operational commanders on the ground to push fire service and NHS colleagues into really risky areas and work with firearms cops. So without going into tactics and looking at what that in a detailed way, basically means that if you're injured as part of one of these incidents, we'd look to get people to you much quicker. And we wanted to test that really. So, in addition to that, so the testing of the new kind of JOPS 3, the new operating principles that we were going to exercise, we wanted to exercise at the Minster. So there's been an aspiration to exercise at the York Minster as a venue for a number of years now. It's a Tier 1 site. It's the only Tier 1 site outside the capital, really, which has significant historical importance. So in some areas and some kind of terrorist organisations, radical groups, they're going to potentially utilise that venue and create an incident there. So there are a number of functions, and it's a really, really, it's a really, really kind of unique venue. So we're kind of obligated to exercise there as well. So they're the two fundamental reasons as to why Obtundity existed, to test the new operating principles off the back of the Manchester Inner Inquiry, to put our operational resources through that in a cohesive way to say, let's see what these mean to us, let's give them a test and see what we can do. And to just test functionality at that Tier 1 site, because it's important that blue light services understand what it is to operate there. And the Minster itself has its own police force that really do need to understand how they integrate into us locally as North Yorkshire Police. So they're the two main reasons why we exercised, and we had a really successful day.
Yeah, of course, I'd forgotten about the Minster Police. So what an interesting spectrum of organisations and parties to be involved and working with. I can only imagine how complicated that gets at times. So do you agree what you're going to look at, what you want to test, who's going to be involved, how the kind of the roles that people are going to play? And then on the night itself, what was your role?
So on the night itself, after kind of that 12-month planning phase, if you like, with all those agencies, on the night itself, it's for me to, as exercise lead, to make sure things go swimmingly. And believe me, they never do. But you're there to kind of oil the wheels and make sure you're there to respond to anything that starts to go wrong. And really, two things can happen in an exercise in this way. It either goes too quickly, because you've got to create a space where your exercising resources are exercised. So it can't be two-stage. You've got to set the stage, if you like, create the arena, and then basically throw them into it and say, right, what are you going to do? And two things usually happen. They either go too quickly or they go too slowly. And it's my job on the night to make sure people are where they need to be. Any kind of anything that goes too slowly speeds up. Anything that goes too quickly slows down. We can engineer all that from within the exercise, and to just maintain that operational overview. And we're working within the community here, let's not forget. We're in the middle of York City. It's important that I have a link back to our control room and other resources and other agencies to say, are we okay to still exercise? What's the impact on the local community on the night? So it's quite a big remit on the night, quite a bit of pressure. But I've got a good team around me, a fantastic team who've helped prepare and plan for this over a good 12-month period. So you do as much as you can to prepare, but that's my role on the night.
And certainly we were warned. I speak as a member of the York community, walking my dog around the Minster. I saw the signs out for weeks in advance telling me that the operation was going to be happening. And you do it quite late at night as well, don't you? You kind of, we hopefully past the peak of the tourist point when you're all out and about. Is that right?
Yeah, one of our key partners here was, of course, City York Council and the Minster itself. So the Minster is not just the building, which is iconic. It's the immediate surrounds and some of the other properties. And then obviously the wider city, York City Council. So they're absolutely key partners here in making sure that the exercise runs smoothly and things go well. So we did this exercise very late at night on a rainy Monday evening in January. And we do that for one reason and one reason alone, and that's to make sure that we don't impact the community in any way. So two of our key partners in this planning phase have been City York Council and the York Minster itself, which the York Minster is not just the building, it's the surrounds as well, properties, people live there, businesses and so on and so forth. So we work closely with them to make sure, look, let's pick a day where we have the least possible impact on the local community, on tourism, which is huge for the city. So a rainy Monday night, just after Christmas, very little footfall, very little impact, very little tourism at that time. So that's why we picked the Monday night. Believe me, I'd have loved to have done it on a sunny afternoon mid season, because planning for an exercise at that time, you have to plan for a lot more inclement weather and lots of other eventualities. So, and on the night, it caused us some issue. Did the weather? So, and I'll come on and talk about that later, maybe. But yeah, if I could have picked a night, it wouldn't have been that night. But we did it for absolutely the right reasons, and it's to lessen that impact.
And obviously, you talked then about not wanting the public to stumble across you and doing it kind of at a quiet time, which absolutely makes sense. But of course, you do need people involved. It's an exercise that's simulating reality. So I believe you had over 300 volunteers. How do you go about finding volunteers to get involved in something like this, and what's the experience like for them?
Yeah, so we have a number of volunteer organisations that we can go to. And as part of the preparation for this exercise, we'd been and visited other exercises. And we'd been to one fairly recently at Leeds Arena, because lots of organisations off the back of Manchester Arena inquiry outcomes are looking to exercise their resources. And at those kind of events, you get to meet different contacts. So we have a number of volunteer organisations within North Yorkshire Police that we can call upon for 50, 60 people. We have our own police volunteers who we can utilise, and then other community groups that want to help out and be involved as well to help policing develop and train in a training way. Our biggest cohort came from local colleges, though, students. So it's really, really important for students to see this kind of thing happening. And these students are going to go on and form the backbone in the future around, they're doing psychology, sociology degrees. They're thinking about joining blue light services and moving forward and be the leaders of the future. So it's important that they understand how it feels to, how crowd dynamics feel in these events, and understand some of the responses that go on. So we had around 150 students, 150 to 200 students arrive and take part as well. So we had about 300 people. For the Minster as a venue, that's a fairly small number. We needed to exercise in that way to make it feel as realistic as possible. So a good exercise feels like as close to an actual operational scenario as it can. So we need the numbers, but there's lots of people out there that want to come and help. All these people came, kind of free of charge. We supplied food and drink and made sure they were catered for in that way. But other than that, these people gave their own time. So immensely grateful for those people that came and volunteered and took part, because we can't run these exercises in a realistic way without them.
Absolutely. No, amazing thing to do. Well, if ever you need a passerby with a cockapoo, you know where to come. I'm just down the road. Give me a shout. Mick, that was a really interesting insight into Obtundity and the night itself. So thank you so much. I think we'll kind of close this part now. And in our final part, we'll talk about what comes next and what comes after the exercise. So thank you again for that insight.